My name is Ethan, and at 29 years old, it wasn't supposed to be 3 years at first. It was just until Dad's back healed, just until Mom could pick up a few more landscaping shifts, just until things settled and I could finally take that offer in Denver, or maybe even move in with Danny, like we joked about over cold pizza takeout in my car. But weeks turned into months and months into years, and somehow I was still in the same twin bed I'd grown up in, working full-time, paying rent that wasn't mine, and tiptoeing past Kyle's bedroom like a guest in my own home. Kyle was always focused on his future. That's what everyone said when he stayed out late or skipped helping with groceries. He has potential, and I guess I didn't. If you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters, let me know where you are watching from. I was dependable, the one who could make things work, the one who wouldn't fall apart if asked for more. So, I said yes, again and again. I covered the rent when Mom's hours got cut. When Dad had to skip shifts after physical therapy, I paid the heating bill through that brutal winter when the landlord threatened to shut things off. I canceled a job interview to stay home with Dad after his second fall. I took on a second project at the firm just to keep up with credit card payments. I said no to vacations, skipped birthdays, and stopped looking at studio listings entirely. But lately, the silence in the house felt heavier. Not angry, just resigned, like everyone had accepted that this was my role, that I was meant to support, and the part of me that used to dream about a home of my own had started whispering again. The day the landlord announced he'd be selling the duplex, I didn't panic like Mom did. I didn't flinch like Dad or cry like Kyle. I just stood in the kitchen and said, maybe it's time we bought something. They blinked at me, stunned. I can figure it out, I added. It's time. Kyle actually hugged me. Mom clapped his hands. Dad looked like he might cry, and for the first time in a long while, I let myself believe I was doing something that might finally feel like mine. A week later, I found the listing. 3 bedrooms, quiet neighborhood, a porch swing already installed. The paperwork took weeks, endless signatures, documents, inspections, and calls during my lunch breaks. I drained nearly everything I'd saved. $20,000 gone in a single wire transfer for the down payment. I took on a fixed mortgage tied to my name, my income, my risk. But when the realtor handed me the keys and said, "Congratulations, it's yours," I felt a quiet kind of pride I hadn't felt in years. Moving day was chaotic in the way that feels like something good is happening. Dad borrowed a friend's pickup. Mom carried boxes of kitchenware like she was 20 years younger. Even Kyle chipped in, unpacking his posters and gaming console like he was moving into a dorm. I didn't say anything. I just watched them fill the rooms, watched light pour into spaces we didn't have before. I took the smallest bedroom, no closet, barely fit a full bed, but it overlooked the backyard. And for once I thought, this is enough. A week later, during a break at work, I opened Facebook. There it was, a photo of Kyle standing in front of the house, grinning with his hand on the railing. The caption read, "Thank you, Mom and Dad, for giving me my first house." I stared, reread. My coffee went cold in my hand. I called him. He answered on the 3rd ring, cheerful. "Hey, what's up?" "That post," I said, trying to steady my voice. "The house?" "Oh yeah," he laughed lightly. "Cute, right?" "Kyle, what do you mean your first house?" There was a pause then. "Well, Mom and Dad put the deed in my name. It just made more sense legally." I sat down hard on the bench outside the office. My ears buzzed. I swallowed. "Why?" "I don't know. Taxes or something. They said it was better this way. Don't be weird about it. My name was on the loan. My name was on every payment stub. But suddenly, I didn't even own what I had bled myself dry to give. I ended the call and stared at the house photo again, his smile stretching wide under the caption that erased me completely. That night, I pulled out the manila folder of closing documents and turned to the last page, searching for the name that should have been mine. I walked through the front door that evening and didn't bother setting my bag down. Dad was watching TV. Mom was folding laundry. Kyle was nowhere in sight. "We need to talk," I said, standing in the living room. They looked up, confused, like I'd interrupted something trivial. I held the phone out toward them, the Facebook post still open. "Why is the house in Kyle's name?" Mom blinked. Dad rubbed his forehead. Neither answered right away. "It's not what you think," Mom said finally. "Then explain it." "We talked about it," Dad added. "He's younger. It's about security, his future. You're already on your feet." I laughed, just once, sharp. "My feet? I've been paying your rent for 3 years." "That's why," Mom said softly. "You've always stepped up. You're stable. Kyle, he needs help. He's still finding his way. And I'm what? The scaffolding." "Ethan," Dad warned, voice low. "Don't make this a fight. You bought this house for the family." "No," I said. "I bought it. I signed. I paid. And you handed it to him." They didn't deny it. That hurt more than any excuse they could have given. I walked out of the room before they could say anything else. Heart pounding. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went to the filing cabinet where we kept all the house paperwork, insurance documents, closing disclosures, tax records. The drawer stuck for a second, then gave way. I thumbed through the folders until I saw one labeled legal deed. Inside, I found copies. Not mine, not originals, not the set I'd kept. These were notarized forms signed 3 weeks before our closing date, transferring future ownership to Kyle, marked as a family gift. And there at the bottom, the signature of my own lawyer, initials I had trusted, letters I'd paid for. I sat back against the wall, documents in my lap, pulse in my throat. They didn't just erase me, they planned it, smiled through dinners, helped unpack my boxes, thanked me, all while signing me away. The next morning, I called a different attorney and scheduled a meeting. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay still, staring at the ceiling in the too small bedroom of the house I apparently didn't own. Every word from the conversation echoed louder in the silence. His future, you're stable, it's not what you think. It was exactly what I thought. By morning, 100 tiny memories had unraveled in my mind, stitching together a picture I had never wanted to look at. I remembered Aunt Jess's toast at Kyle's graduation. Some guys are just born to shine. I remembered Uncle Lou pulling me aside when I got my first job and saying, "It's good you're practical. You'll always land on your feet." And I remembered that Thanksgiving when I paid for the groceries and heard Grandma whisper, "Of course he did. That's what Ethan does." They had all seen me as support, not someone to be celebrated, but someone to depend on. Even my ex, Tara, once said during one of our quieter arguments, "You never choose yourself. I don't even think you know how." I had laughed it off back then. She didn't mean it cruelly, just tired. 2 months later, she packed her bags without drama. I let her go without asking her to stay. I used to think being selfless was noble, that if I kept giving, eventually someone would give back. But all it had done was teach everyone that I could be leaned on without limit. Kyle got special treatment because he was seen as delicate. I got burden after burden because they believed I could handle it. When Dad was out of work, No one asked Kyle to pick up an extra shift at the bookstore when Mom had her surgery. I was the one who rearranged my work schedule, not Kyle. And now, when the most permanent thing I'd ever done for them was complete, they didn't even hesitate to pass it on to him. I thought about the documents again, about my lawyer's signature. Had he known? Had he been told some half-truth about a family agreement and signed off without realizing what it cost me? Or had they all decided I'd be too polite, too obedient to ever fight it? I looked at the clock. My meeting with the new attorney was in 2 hours. I grabbed the folder of documents and stood up. It was time to stop holding what was never meant to be mine. The attorney's office was quiet, almost too warm. I sat across from a woman named Elise. Unsharp suit, sharper eyes. She took her time reading the documents I laid out between us, flipping pages with calm, methodical fingers. When she finally looked up, I already knew what she was going to say. "You signed the mortgage," she said. "You're financially responsible, but the deed, that's in your brother's name." I nodded once. Unless you can prove fraud or coercion, there's little legal ground to reclaim the house. I bit the inside of my cheek. Even if you paid for everything, he can argue it was a gift. And if your parents helped orchestrate the title transfer and they're not contesting it. "I know," I whispered. She leaned back, thoughtful. "But if it was a gift, Kyle may have a tax obligation, especially if the value exceeds federal thresholds." That caught my attention. How would I check? He'd be required to file a gift tax return within the year. If he didn't, there could be penalties. And if he received other financial benefits, student loan deferrals, government aid, those might be affected too. Technically, he owns property now. I left her office with a tight knot in my stomach and something else humming underneath it. Not hope, not yet, but something close to focus. Back home, I opened my laptop and started digging. I pulled up Kyle's school records. I remembered the student loan paperwork Mom once asked me to help fill out. The FAFSA. Kyle had used our parents as co-signers. He had over $20,000 in federal loans, currently in deferment for economic hardship. I checked his work history next. That took longer. His resume had been in the family computer. According to it, he worked part-time for a design agency, but a few quick searches revealed the agency didn't list him as staff. No LinkedIn post, no formal bio. I called a contact I knew who worked in the same building. "He's freelance," he said. "Off the books. Company avoids paperwork that way." Perfect. Next, I checked property tax records. The county hadn't received a gifted declaration. No filings under his name for the current year. They'd forgotten the system they were trying to manipulate. Forgot that the same rules they bent could bend them back. I made a list. IRS tip line, Department of Education, State Tax Board, and an anonymous submission portal for underreported income. I wasn't burning their house down. I was letting the system walk through the door they left open, and I hadn't even knocked yet. It started with a voicemail. Kyle's voice, tight with panic, echoed through my phone. "Hey, can you call me back? I got something from the IRS. I don't understand it. Something about a gift tax. Just call me, okay?" I didn't. A few days later, Mom called, then Dad, then both together. They left message after message, some pleading, some frustrated, all circling the same request. Help your brother. Be the bigger person. This wasn't supposed to happen. They never said we're sorry. They never said we were wrong. I sat at my desk, letting each call roll to voicemail, sipping tea, and watching the light stretch across my living room wall. My living room, my name on the lease, my keys on the counter, my peace unbothered. I didn't owe them anything anymore, not even a response. 2 weeks later, Kyle showed up in person. I heard the knock before I saw him through the peephole, hair messy, clutching a manila envelope like it might save him. I opened the door halfway. "I didn't know," he blurted, "about the taxes. They say I owe over $8,000. I don't have it." I didn't speak. He looked down, swallowing. "And the loans. They pulled my deferment, said I'm no longer eligible, and then the agency let me go. They're being audited." Still, I didn't speak. "Please, I know you're mad, but I didn't mean for this. I thought the house was for all of us. Mom and Dad said it made sense this way. I didn't know it would turn into this." I met his eyes. "But you posted it. You claimed it. You made it yours in front of everyone." "I didn't think," he whispered. "That's the problem," I said, and shut the door. It was 3 more days before Mom called again. "He's your brother," she said. "He's in over his head." "He always is," I replied, "and I always pulled him out. And now," I paused, "now he's old enough to swim." I hung up before she could answer. The next morning, a new letter arrived. This one addressed to Kyle, but delivered to my mailbox. Another agency, another fine. I slipped it into a manila envelope, sealed it, and left it on the front porch. That night I slept without grinding my teeth for the first time in years. The house was gone by early spring. Bank repossession, unpaid taxes, loan defaults. The official notice went up on the door in late March. I never drove by. I didn't need to. I'd already stopped seeing it as mine long before the government did. Kyle moved into a shared apartment near the city. 1 bedroom split between 2 roommates and a part-time retail job he didn't talk about. He stopped calling after that. I think some part of him still believed I'd step in. I never did. My parents went back to renting a small duplex farther from the center, the kind with yellowed blinds and baseboard heaters that click in the winter. They didn't tell me they moved. I found out through a change of address notification forwarded by the bank by May. I put an offer on a 1-bedroom condo. It was small, 2nd floor with a creaky balcony and outdated tile, but it had sunlight in the morning and quiet in the evening. It was enough. I paid for it myself, every cent. No one cried at closing. No one posed on the porch for Facebook. Just me, the agent, and the notary signing what I had earned with nobody's permission. A week after I moved in, I found a letter in my mailbox. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar. Kyle, 5 pages. Apologies, explanations, maybe regrets. He said he didn't understand what it had meant to me, that he never meant to take anything away, that he wished he could undo it. I read it once, then folded it neatly and placed it in a drawer I rarely opened. There are some things you don't reply to, not because you hate the person who sent them, but because you finally stopped needing them to see you clearly. I met someone last fall. Her name is Clara. She's kind, calm. When I told her what happened with my family, she didn't offer advice. She just listened and said, "That must have hurt." She knows how to ask before assuming. She knows how to stay quiet when silence is the answer. I make enough now, more than enough. And for the first time in years, every dollar I earn is mine. Every room I walk into is mine. Every breath I take in the morning isn't a borrowed one. And when I unlock my front door each night, I walk into something I built not for anyone else, not as a gift, but as proof that I was never asking too much. 6 months have passed. The condo still smells faintly like cedar from the shelf I stain myself. I keep fresh flowers on the kitchen table, even when no one's coming over. On Saturdays, I bake muffins I don't always eat. On Sundays, I sleep in without guilt. Clara comes by often. She brings coffee and asks how my day was, not because she needs anything from me, but because she really wants to know. Sometimes we don't talk at all. Sometimes we just sit on the balcony with the radio playing and nothing to prove. My phone rings less now. Mom calls every few weeks. I let it go to voicemail. Her messages sound softer, like she's finally figured out that silence doesn't mean war. It means I'm not available to play the same role anymore. She hasn't said sorry. Not exactly, but I think she knows. Kyle hasn't reached out since the letter. I kept it still in the same drawer. I don't read it anymore. I've made new traditions. Tuesday dinners with coworkers who don't expect anything from me. A hiking group I joined where no one knows my family name. Laughter that isn't strained. Questions that don't come with judgment. At work, I was promoted. My manager said it wasn't just the designs I delivered. It was how I handled pressure, how I led with steadiness. I smiled and said, "Thank you," thinking how long it took to stop confusing quiet strength with being everyone's anchor. One night, Clara asked if I ever missed them, my family. I didn't lie. Sometimes, I said, but not the version they gave me. I missed the version I hoped they'd be. She didn't press, just held my hand. Tonight, I sat on the floor of my living room, sorting through old receipts and papers. I found a photo of the first house, the one I bought, the one they gave away. Kyle stood in the doorway, smiling too wide. I flipped it over and wrote in the corner, "Not mine." Then I put it in a box labeled "No longer needed." I turned off the lights, stood by the window and whispered to myself, they were never my home. I was building someone else's shelter with my hands. And now, finally, I've built one of my own with walls that don't ask me to disappear.